My name is Natalie Caldwell, and I was standing beside my parents' caskets when my uncle leaned in close and whispered, "Tomorrow, you need to clear out of the house. Caldwell property stays with Caldwell men. That's how it's always been." 2 days after their funeral, I found my belongings thrown out in the rain. But here's what Uncle Terrence didn't know. My mother had spent 8 years preparing for this exact moment. 8 years of secret meetings with lawyers. 8 years of building something he couldn't touch. Before I tell you what happened at the will reading, let me take you back to the beginning, to the day everything ended and somehow everything began. The rain started during the eulogy. St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Hartford had seen better days, the kind of old Connecticut church with stained glass windows that threw colored shadows across worn wooden pews. My parents got married here in 1996. Now, 29 years later, 80 people filled those same pews to say goodbye. I sat in the front row, my black dress still damp from the walk from the car, a crumpled tissue tucked in my sleeve. The tissue had been there since the viewing that morning, when I'd broken down looking at my mother's hands. Hands that had held mine through every childhood nightmare, every teenage heartbreak, every moment I thought I wasn't enough. Those hands were folded now across her chest, perfectly still. Wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Uncle Terrence stood at the podium, his Hugo Boss suit perfectly tailored, his voice carrying that particular tone of a man who believes his own performance. He'd been talking for 7 minutes, about my father. "Denzel Caldwell was a man of principle," Terrence said, his Rolex catching the light as he gestured. "He built his contracting business from nothing. He believed in hard work, in family, in tradition. He taught me everything I know about what it means to be a Caldwell man." I felt my grandmother's hand tighten on mine. Terrence's wife, Patricia, sat across the aisle in a black Chanel dress, her phone face down on her lap, but her fingers twitching toward it every few seconds. She'd checked it twice during the opening prayer. "Denzel knew," Terrence continued, "that some things are worth preserving, that legacy matters, that the Caldwell name means something. He finally mentioned my mother, twice, and Jennifer, his devoted wife, who supported him in everything. That was it. Jennifer, the devoted wife. Not Jennifer, who'd survived 2 years of chemotherapy. Not Jennifer, who'd tended a lavender garden every morning for 28 years. Not Jennifer, who'd held this family together while my father built his business and his principles and his belief that sons mattered more than daughters. Just Jennifer, the devoted wife. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell everyone that my mother had been more than devotion, more than support, more than the quiet woman behind the Caldwell name. But Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand tighter, and when I looked at her, she shook her head slightly. Her eyes said, "Not yet. Wait." I didn't understand what I was waiting for. The service ended. People filed past, offering condolences that blurred together. "Your father was a good man. Your mother was so sweet. You must be devastated." I smiled. I thanked them. I accepted their sympathy while feeling nothing but a hollow exhaustion that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with the 28 years I'd spent trying to matter in a family that had decided before I was born that daughters didn't. I was accepting a hug from Mrs. Henderson, our former neighbor, when Terrence appeared at my elbow. "Natalie," he said quietly, "we need to talk. About the house." The funeral flowers were still fresh. My mother had been in the ground for less than 3 hours. "Uncle Terrence," I said, keeping my voice level, "we haven't even read the will yet." "The will is just paperwork." He straightened his tie. "Hermes," I noticed absently. "You know how your father felt about these things, how our family has always handled inheritance." I stared at him. We were standing in the church vestibule, stained glass casting red and blue shadows across his perfectly groomed hair. Behind him, Patricia was watching us, her expression unreadable. "Sons inherit," Terrence said, as if explaining something simple to a child. "That's how it's always been in the Caldwell family. You know that." "I know that's what Dad believed." "It's not about belief, Natalie. It's about tradition. It's about keeping things in the family." He softened his voice, probably trying to sound reasonable. "Look, I understand this is hard. You've been living there, taking care of things while your mother was sick. I appreciate that. I do. The word appreciate coming from a man who'd visited my dying mother 3 times in 2 years. But that was your choice, he continued. You chose to put your career on hold. I didn't put my career on hold. I'm a registered nurse. I was working night shifts so I could be there during her treatments. Right. And that was noble, but it doesn't change the reality of the situation. He glanced around, making sure no one was listening. The house was your father's, the estate was your father's, and Denzel made it very clear to me many times over the years what he wanted. My throat felt tight. What he wanted. I'm giving you a week, Terrence said. That's generous considering I could legally take possession immediately. 1 week to get your things out, find a place. I'll even help you look for an apartment if you need. Terrence! Grandma Dorothy's voice cut through his words like a knife through silk. She'd appeared beside us, all 81 years of her standing barely 5'3", but somehow taking up all the space in the vestibule. Perhaps we could save this conversation for after we've all had time to mourn. Dorothy. Terrence's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. I'm just trying to help Natalie plan ahead. No one wants this to be drawn out and difficult. No, Grandma said quietly. I imagine you don't. There was something in her tone that made Terrence's smile falter, but he recovered quickly, nodded to both of us, and walked back to where Patricia was waiting by the door. I watched them leave without saying goodbye to anyone. I watched Patricia lean in and whisper something that made Terrence's jaw tighten. I watched them get into their BMW and drive away. Grandma, I said, what just happened? She took my hand again, the same way she'd been holding it all day. Your mother loved you more than lavender and sunshine, darling. Remember that. It was such a strange thing to say, such a specific thing. I didn't know then that it was a quote from a letter I hadn't read yet, a letter that would explain everything. I came home from work 2 days later to find my key didn't work. It was Wednesday evening, just past 7. I'd worked a double shift at Maplewood Senior Living because grief does this thing where it makes you want to be useful, to be needed, to be anything other than alone with your thoughts. Mrs. Rosa had held my hand during my lunch break and told me about losing her own mother. Mr. Chin had hugged me and said, "You were a good daughter." I'd held it together. I'd been professional. I'd done my job. And now I was standing in the driveway of 127 Maple Drive, the house where I'd grown up, the house where I'd spent the last 2 years caring for my mother, and my key was turning in a lock that no longer recognized it. I tried again, confused. Maybe the cold had warped something. March in Connecticut could be brutal. But no, the lock had been changed, the deadbolt too. I stood there for a moment, my nursing bag heavy on my shoulder, trying to process what this meant. Then I walked around to the side of the house, to the garage. That's where I found my life. Cardboard boxes, stacked against the garage wall. My clothes, my books, my mother's recipe box that she'd given me last Christmas. My framed nursing degree from UConn. Everything I owned, thrown into hastily packed boxes. And because it had rained that afternoon, a cold, miserable rain that matched the past week perfectly, 2 of the boxes were soaked through. I could see the water damage on my degree, the ink running. 6 years of school, of double shifts at a diner to pay tuition, of proving that I could do this without my father's help, reduced to a warped piece of paper in a wet box. Through the window, I could see lights on inside the house. Movement in the living room. Patricia walked past, wine glass in hand, laughing at something on her phone. She saw me standing there in the rain, looking at my ruined belongings. She smiled, actually smiled, lifted her wine glass in a little toast, and walked away. I pulled out my phone and called Terrence. My hands were shaking, from cold or rage, I wasn't sure which. He answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. Natalie. You changed the locks. The house is legally mine, he said, not even pretending to apologize. I had my lawyer verify it this morning. Your father's estate, your father's house, your father's decision. I gave you until the end of the week, but Patricia and I decided it would be easier to make a clean break. You threw my things out in the rain. I had them carefully packed by a moving company. If some boxes got wet, that's unfortunate, but it's hardly my responsibility. His voice had that edge now, the one that meant he was done being polite. You have 24 hours to collect your belongings before I have them removed from the property. Removed to where? That's not my concern. Look, Natalie, I know you're upset, but maybe if you'd made something of yourself instead of playing nurse to old people, you wouldn't be in this situation. Playing nurse. 2 years of night shifts. 2 years of holding my mother's hand through chemo. 2 years of cleaning up vomit and changing sheets and singing her the songs she used to sing to me. 2 years of watching her fight and suffer and survive only to lose her to a truck driver who fell asleep on I-95. Playing nurse. I see, I said quietly. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. 24 hours. He hung up. I stood there in the wet grass next to my boxes of ruined belongings, and I didn't cry. I was too tired to cry. Too empty. Instead, I sat down and started going through the boxes, looking for what could be salvaged. That's when I found it. A box of my mother's things. Items Terrence must have assumed were junk. Her gardening gloves, worn soft from years of tending her lavender. A few photographs of her as a young woman before she met my father. A book of poetry she'd loved. And at the bottom, a cream-colored envelope with my name written in her shaky handwriting. For Natalie, when the time comes. My breath caught. I knew this handwriting. These were the letters she'd formed during chemo, when her hands trembled from the medication. I'd watched her try to write Christmas cards last year, watched her get frustrated when the pen wouldn't cooperate. She'd written this while she was sick. She'd known this would happen. I didn't open it. Not there, sitting on the wet lawn of the house that was supposed to be mine. I couldn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called the only person I could think of. Diane Foster answered on the third ring. Natalie, everything okay? No, I said, and my voice finally broke. No, everything is not okay. I need... Where are you? My parents' house. Former house. I don't... Stay there. I'm coming. 20 minutes. She made it in 18. Diane pulled up in her Honda Odyssey, took one look at me and the boxes and the house with Patricia visible through the lit windows, and said, Get in. We'll deal with your stuff later. Right now, you're coming home with me. I can't just leave everything. Yes, you can, and you will, because whatever's in those boxes isn't worth hypothermia. She opened the back of her van. Help me load what we can fit. The rest can wait until tomorrow. We worked in silence, loading boxes into her van. The wet ones we left because what was the point? When we finished, I took one more look at the house. My house. The house my mother had made into a home. The house where she'd planted lavender every spring and made Sunday dinners and told me I was enough, even when my father's silence said otherwise. Patricia was still visible in the living room, phone to her ear, laughing. Come on, Diane said gently. Let's go. Diane's apartment was small, a 2-bedroom in a Hartford complex that had seen better decades, but it was warm and dry, and when she handed me a cup of tea and a blanket and told me to sit, I felt something in my chest finally unclench. Do you want to talk about it? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. There's something I need to read first. The envelope sat on the coffee table where I'd placed it, cream-colored and somehow ominous. Diane saw me looking at it. Your mom? I think so. I found it in a box of her things. I picked it up, felt the weight of it. There was something else inside besides paper, something small and hard. Diane settled into the chair across from me. Do you want me to leave you alone? No, stay. Please. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written on that expensive stationery my mother kept in her desk drawer, the kind she only used for important things. And beneath it, a business card. Evelyn Cole, Estate Attorney Harrison and Cole Hartford, Connecticut. I set the card aside and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was worse than I remembered. She must have written this during one of the bad weeks, when the chemo made everything harder. My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, then what I feared has happened. Your father and your uncle have shown you exactly who they are. I want you to know. I saw it. I always saw it. I couldn't change your father. God knows I tried, but I could protect you. 8 years ago, when you were accepted into nursing school and Denzel said, girls don't need expensive educations, I made a decision. I went to see Evelyn Cole. We started planning. Every month when I told your father I was going to doctor's appointments, I was meeting with Evelyn. Every time Denzel gave Terrence money for his business, I was putting money away for you. Every time he told you that you weren't enough, I was adding another document to your file. I know you're hurting right now. I know Terrence has probably taken the house, probably thrown you out, probably made you feel like you're nothing. But baby, you're not nothing. You never were. Contact Evelyn. She has everything you need. All the papers, all the arrangements, everything I couldn't give you while I was alive. You are not a burden. You never were. You are the best thing I ever did. I love you more than lavender and all good things. Mom, P.S. Don't trust Terrence. Ask Evelyn about the questions I had her investigate. Ask her about the records from Hartford General Hospital, 1973. Ask her why there's no birth certificate for Terrence Caldwell at the hospital where he claims he was born. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. 8 years. She'd been planning this for 8 years. All those doctor's appointments. All those afternoons when she'd ask me to drive her to Hartford and wait in the car. I'd thought she was dealing with medical bills, insurance paperwork, things too boring to involve me in. She'd been building me a future. Natalie? Diane's voice seemed to come from far away. What does it say? I handed her the letter, couldn't speak. Diane read it silently, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something like awe. When she finished, she looked at the business card, then back at me. Your mom was a badass. A sound came out of me that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. She never said anything, not once in 8 years. Because if she had, someone would have tried to stop her. Diane set the letter down carefully. Natalie, do you understand what this means? She left you something. Something Terrence can't touch. But what? What could she possibly have had that Dad didn't control? I don't know, but this Evelyn Cole will. Diane picked up the business card. It's almost 8. Too late to call tonight. But first thing tomorrow? No. I took the card from her. Now. I'm calling now. The number went to voicemail. Expected. At 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. But the recording said, You've reached Evelyn Cole at Harrison & Cole. If this is an urgent estate matter, please press 1 to reach our answering service. I pressed 1. A woman answered. Professional, efficient. Harrison & Cole answering service. My name is Natalie Caldwell. I need to speak with Evelyn Cole about my mother's estate. Jennifer Caldwell. A pause. 1 moment, please. The hold music played for less than 30 seconds before it clicked off and a new voice came on the line. Older, assured. Mrs. Caldwell, this is Evelyn Cole. I've been waiting for your call. My breath caught. You've been what? Your mother left very specific instructions. If you didn't contact me within 1 week of her death, I was to reach out to you, but I had a feeling you'd find the letter sooner than that. A pause. I'm very sorry for your loss, Natalie. Jennifer was an exceptional woman. You knew her. I knew her for 8 years. We met monthly. She was one of the most deliberate clients I've ever represented. Evelyn's voice softened. I imagine you have questions. I don't even know what questions to ask. Then let me tell you what happens next. There's a formal will reading scheduled for next Thursday at 2 p.m. Both your parents' wills need to be read together. Terrence has already been notified. I'd like you to attend. I don't understand. If Dad left everything to Terrence, your father's will represents only a portion of your parents' combined estate, Evelyn said carefully. Your mother's estate is separate and substantially different. Say, the room seemed to tilt. Different how? That's something I'd prefer to discuss in person, with all parties present. But Natalie, I need you to trust me until then. Can you do that? I looked at Diane, who was watching me with wide eyes. Whatever Terrence says, Evelyn continued, whatever he threatens, don't react. Don't sign anything, just wait. Can you do that for me? For your mother? I thought about the letter, about 8 years of secret planning, about my mother, who I'd thought was just surviving, actually preparing. Yes, I said. I can wait. Good. I'll see you Thursday at 2 p.m. Harrison and Cole, downtown Hartford. The brownstone on Asylum Street. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, Diane staring at me, my mother's letter on the coffee table between us. What did she say? Diane asked. She said my mother's estate is separate from my father's. She said it's different, substantially different. What does that mean? I don't know. I picked up the letter again, reread the postscript about Terrence and Hartford General Hospital. But I think it means my mother knew things she never told anyone. Outside, the rain had started again, tapping against the windows of Diane's small apartment. I thought about Patricia in my house, drinking wine, about Terrence changing the locks before my parents were cold in the ground, about 28 years of being told I didn't matter, and I thought about my mother, meeting with a lawyer every month for 8 years, building something in secret, protecting me in the only way she knew how. What do I do until Thursday? I asked. Diane smiled. You wait, and you let them think they've won. The call came 3 days before the will reading at 10 o'clock on a Monday night. I was sitting in Diane's kitchen, trying to study for my recertification exam and failing to absorb anything. Terrence's name lit up my phone screen and my stomach dropped. Diane, who was making tea, saw my expression. Don't answer it. I have to. You really don't. But I did, because whatever Terrence wanted, it was better to know than to wonder. I answered. Uncle Terrence. Natalie. His voice was different, friendly, almost warm, which was somehow worse than hostile. I've been thinking about our situation, about us being at odds like this. It's not good for anyone. I waited. I know I could have handled things better, he continued. The timing, the way I went about it. You're right to be upset. I was insensitive. The apology sounded rehearsed. I imagined Patricia coaching him, telling him what to say. I want to make this right, Terrence said. I've drawn up a simple agreement. You sign away any claim to contest the estate, and in exchange, I'll give you $15,000 cash. Clean break, no hard feelings. Enough to get yourself settled somewhere nice. $15,000 for the house I grew up in. For 2 years of caring for my mother while he visited 3 times. For every dismissal, every slight, every moment my father and his brother made me feel like I was taking up space that should have belonged to someone worthier. No, I said. Natalie, be reasonable. You're not going to win anything in probate. Dad's will is crystal clear. All you'll do is spend money on lawyers and drag this out for months. Take the money, start fresh. I said no, Uncle Terrence. His voice hardened instantly. You're making a mistake. You know that, right? A huge mistake. That's my choice to make. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you don't have any choices. You don't have a home. You don't have family support. You're a 28-year-old nurse living on a couch, and you're about to go up against a will that's been in place for years. He paused. I'm trying to help you avoid embarrassment, Natalie. I'm trying to give you a way out with some dignity. Dignity, from the man who'd thrown my belongings out in the rain. I'll see you at the will reading, Uncle Terrence. Fine. He practically spat the word. But remember this conversation when you walk out of that room with nothing. Remember that I tried to be generous. What happens next is on you. The line went dead. I set the phone down with shaking hands. Diane put a mug of tea in front of me. What did he want? He offered me $15,000 to sign away any contest rights. $15,000? She whistled. He's scared. Or he's trying to buy me off cheap. No. Diane sat down across from me, pulled out her own phone. Someone who's confident doesn't make offers. They wait for the will reading and let the paperwork speak for itself. She started typing. What's his business called? Caldwell Properties. Why? Her fingers flew across her phone screen. After a moment, her eyes widened. Oh, wow. What? She turned her phone around. On the screen was a news article from 3 months ago. Local developer faces foreclosure on Greenwich property. I scanned the article. Terrence's name appeared multiple times. So did the phrase significant investment losses and mounting debt. Keep reading, Diane said. Another article from 2 months ago. Caldwell Properties' $800,000 investment loss raises questions. And another from a month ago. Greenwich couple defaults on mortgage. I looked up at Diane. He's broke. Not just broke, drowning. Look at Patricia's Instagram. I pulled it up on my phone. Patricia's feed, usually full of designer bags and gallery openings and photos of their Greenwich house, had changed. The recent posts were all about minimalism and finding contentment in simplicity and the joy of downsizing. Code for, we can't afford our lifestyle anymore. He doesn't just want the house, I said slowly. He needs it. He's counting on Dad's estate to save him. Which means, Diane said, he's probably already told creditors he's getting an inheritance. Probably already made promises based on money he thought was coming. I thought about Terrence's desperation on the phone, about Patricia's smile through the window, about the way they'd both been watching me at the funeral, calculating. They weren't just greedy. They were desperate. And desperate people do terrible things. Evelyn told me not to react, I said. Not to sign anything. Just to wait. Then that's what you do. Diane squeezed my hand. Thursday is 3 days away. You can wait 3 days. I picked up my mother's letter, read it again. Don't trust Terrence. Mom had known. Somehow, she'd known. What's that postscript about? Diane asked. The hospital records? I read it aloud. Ask her about the records from Hartford General Hospital, 1973. Ask her why there's no birth certificate for Terrence Caldwell at the hospital where he claims he was born. We looked at each other. That's oddly specific, Diane said. Mom didn't write things she didn't mean. So what do you think it means? I thought about Terrence's desperation to be recognized as a Caldwell, about the way he clung to the family name, to tradition, to the idea that he deserved everything because of his gender. I think, I said slowly, that my mother found out something about Terrence, something he doesn't know anyone knows. And she wanted you to have that information. Or she wanted Evelyn to have it. I looked at my phone at the time. 3 days. I can wait 3 days. But as I said it, I wondered what else my mother had discovered in 8 years of secret planning, what else she'd left behind for me to find, and I wondered if Terrence had any idea what he was walking into on Thursday. The morning of the will reading, I visited my mother's grave. Hartford Memorial Gardens sat on a hill overlooking the Connecticut River, the kind of old cemetery where marble angels watched over plots that dated back to the 1800s. My parents' graves were in the newer section, side by side under a oak tree that would be beautiful in summer. Now, in late March, it was just branches and mud and the last stubborn patches of snow. I'd brought lavender from my mother's garden. I'd gone back to the house yesterday with Diane as backup, intending to just grab the last of my boxes. But when I'd seen the garden, Mom's garden, something in me had broken open. Most of the plants were dead or dormant. But there, in the corner where the fence blocked the worst of the winter wind, a few stalks had survived. New growth, purple-green and fragile. I'd cut them carefully, brought them with me. Now I knelt in the wet grass and placed them on my mother's grave. "Hey, Mom," I said quietly. "I know you can't hear me, or maybe you can. Be you." I don't know how any of this works. A bird called somewhere in the trees. The river sounds carried up the hill. I read your letter. All of them, actually. You wrote me 3. Did you know that? One in the box you left, one that Evelyn has for after the reading, and one that's apparently for later. Evelyn wouldn't tell me when later is. I traced my fingers over her name on the temporary marker. The permanent stone wouldn't be ready for another month. Jennifer Eleanor Caldwell, 1969 to 2025. Beloved Mother. They'd fought about the inscription. Terrence had wanted it to say, Beloved Wife and Mother. I'd insisted on just Mother. It was the first fight I'd won. I don't know what you left me, I continued. Evelyn won't tell me. She says I need to hear it with Terrence there, that you wanted it that way. But Mom, I'm scared. What if it's nothing? What if all of this, the planning, the secrets, what if Dad found out and changed everything? The wind picked up, carrying the scent of wet earth and early spring. Terrence offered me $15,000 to go away, to sign papers saying I won't contest anything. Part of me wanted to take it. Not because it's enough, it's not. But because I'm tired, Mom. I'm so tired of fighting, of trying to prove I matter, of feeling like I'm always one step away from being told I'm not enough. I wiped my eyes. I hadn't meant to cry. But then I remember you. I remember the way you'd wake up early to tend this garden, even when you were sick, even when the chemo made you so tired you could barely stand. You'd go out there and pull weeds and water the lavender like it was the most important thing in the world. I picked up one of the stalks I'd brought, held it to my nose. The scent was faint but unmistakable. I never asked you why lavender. I wish I had. I wish I'd asked you a lot of things. My phone buzzed. Diane. Picking you up in 30. You okay? I texted back. At the cemetery. Be ready. I have to go, I said to the grave, to my mother, to the air. The reading is at 2. Evelyn says you prepared for this, that you thought of everything. I hope you're right, Mom, because I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this alone. I stood up, brushed the wet grass off my jeans. I love you, I said. I love you more than lavender and all good things. That's what you used to say, right? I'm going to try to remember that. When things get hard today, I'm going to try to remember that you thought I was worth protecting. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. And Mom, about Terrence and the hospital records, whatever you found out, whatever you wanted me to know, I hope it's enough. I hope it's enough to make them finally see that I'm not nothing, that I never was. The drive from the cemetery to downtown Hartford took 20 minutes. Diane drove while I sat in the passenger seat, trying to slow my racing heart. You look nice, Diane said. Professional. I'd worn my best outfit, a navy dress I usually saved for job interviews, paired with the blazer Diane had lent me. My nursing scrubs were more comfortable, more me, but Evelyn had suggested looking put together. You're going to walk into a room with people who have underestimated you your entire life, she'd said when we'd spoken yesterday. Let them see who you really are. What if there's nothing? I asked Diane now. What if Mom overestimated what she could do? Then you walk out of there with your head high and you build your own life anyway, like you've been doing all along. Diane glanced over at me. But, Natalie? I don't think your mom overestimated anything. That letter wasn't written by someone who was guessing. We pulled up to Harrison and Cole at 1:45. The building was exactly what Evelyn had described. A brownstone in the historic district, brass nameplate gleaming. The kind of old money law firm that had probably been here for 100 years. Through the glass door, I could see Terrence and Patricia in the lobby. Terrence was pacing, checking his Rolex every few seconds. Patricia sat perfectly still, her Chanel bag in her lap, her expression blank. They looked nervous. Ready? Diane asked. I touched my mother's Timex watch on my wrist. I'd found it in the box of her belongings, still keeping time, the leather strap cracked from years of wear. She'd worn it every day, even after my father had offered to buy her something nicer. I'm ready, I said. We got out of the car. I straightened my dress, took a breath, and then I saw the second car pulling up behind us. A Lincoln Town car, the kind with a driver. The back door opened and Grandma Dorothy stepped out. She was wearing a navy dress, her silver hair pinned back perfectly, and on her right hand, the sapphire ring I'd admired my entire childhood. She saw me and smiled. Hello, darling, she said. I hope you don't mind that I came. Your mother asked me to be here. Terrence had appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from nervous to confused to something like fear. Dorothy, he said, I didn't know you were. Why are you? Jennifer wanted me here, Grandma said simply. She took my arm, linked it through hers. Shall we go in, Natalie? Together we walked toward the door, toward Terrence and Patricia and whatever my mother had left behind. And as we climbed the steps, Grandma squeezed my arm and whispered, Your mother was the smartest woman I ever raised. Trust her, darling. Trust her completely. The door to Harrison and Cole opened. Inside, Evelyn Cole stood waiting, a folder in her hands and a slight smile on her face. Miss Caldwell, she said, welcome. We've been expecting you. The conference room at Harrison and Cole had a mahogany table long enough to seat 12 people, though only 6 of us were there. Afternoon light slanted through tall windows, catching dust motes in the air and making everything feel suspended, waiting. Evelyn Cole sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, her silver hair swept into an elegant twist. To her right sat Sarah Mitchell, a younger woman who'd been introduced as a legal assistant and witness. The rest of us arranged ourselves with careful distance. Terrence took the seat closest to Evelyn, a power move, claiming territory. Patricia sat beside him, her manicured nails tapping against the table in a nervous rhythm she probably didn't realize she was making. Grandma Dorothy sat next to me, her presence solid and reassuring. Across from us, Terrence kept glancing at her with an expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion, maybe, or concern. "Thank you all for coming," Evelyn began, her voice clear and professional. "Before we begin, I want to note that we'll be reading two wills today, Denzel Caldwell's will and Jennifer Caldwell's will. They are separate documents with separate provisions." "Two wills?" Patricia frowned. "Why does that matter? Everything was jointly owned." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Not everything, as it turns out." I felt Grandma's hand find mine under the table and squeeze. Terrence straightened his Rolex with that practiced gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. "Fine, let's get this over with. Read Dad's will first." "Very well." Evelyn opened the first folder, removed several pages. "Last will and testament of Denzel Allen Caldwell, dated 14 months ago, witnessed and notarized in Hartford County, Connecticut." The room went quiet. This was it. Evelyn read through the standard provisions: executor appointments, debt payments, funeral instructions. My father's voice seemed to echo through her words, that particular tone of certainty he'd always had. The tone that said he knew exactly how the world should work. Then she reached the distribution of assets. "To my brother, Terrence Robert Caldwell, I leave 60% of my personal assets, including my vehicle, my workshop tools and equipment, and my share of all financial accounts held jointly with my wife, Jennifer." Terrence nodded slowly, satisfaction spreading across his features. 60%. Not the 70 he'd probably expected, but close enough. "To my daughter, Natalie Lynn Caldwell, I leave 40% of my remaining personal assets." I blinked. 40%? I'd expected token amounts, maybe 10 or 15%. Something to avoid looking completely heartless but small enough to make the point. 40% of remaining assets, Patricia murmured, doing the math. After debts and expenses. So, basically, Dad's accounts totaled approximately $95,000, Terrence said. His voice had taken on that magnanimous tone, the one that meant he thought he was being generous. "After estate costs, you'll get maybe $38,000, Natalie. More than I expected Dad to leave you, honestly." He smiled at me like he was doing me a favor. Grandma's grip on my hand tightened, but her voice was quiet and controlled. "Terrence, perhaps you could let the attorney finish?" "What's left to finish?" He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the backrest. "The house was Dad's. The money was Dad's. I'm the primary heir. Natalie gets a consolation prize, which is generous under the circumstances." Patricia had pulled out her phone, probably already calculating how to use Terrence's share to pay down their debts. "Actually," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through Terrence's satisfaction like a scalpel, "there's quite a bit left to discuss." Something in her tone made Terrence's smile falter. "Robert's will represents only a portion of your parents' combined estate," Evelyn continued, closing the first folder and opening the second. "Your mother's estate is separate and significantly larger than your father's." The room went very still. "Separate?" Terrence sat forward. "What do you mean, separate? Mom didn't have her own estate. She was a housewife. Everything she had came from Dad." "That's not accurate, Mr. Caldwell." "It is accurate." Terrence stood up as if height would give him authority. "I know my own family. Whatever little savings account Mom might have had, it doesn't change anything. Dad made his wishes clear for decades. The son inherits, the daughter takes what she's given and is grateful." He turned to me, and the venom was back, sharp and familiar. "This is what I was trying to spare you, Natalie. This embarrassment. You're sitting here hoping Mom left you something meaningful." "What? Her jewelry? Her recipe cards? It doesn't matter. The house is still Dad's. The real money is still Dad's. And you're still—" "Mr. Caldwell!" Evelyn's voice wasn't loud, but it stopped Terrence mid-sentence. "Sit down!" The command was so unexpected that Terrence actually obeyed, dropping back into his chair. "I understand you have opinions about how your parents' assets should be distributed," Evelyn continued, her tone steel wrapped in silk. "But this is a legal proceeding, not a family argument. Your mother's will contains specific provisions that supersede your assumptions. If you interrupt again, I will ask you to leave and you can receive the information in writing." Patricia grabbed Terrence's arm, whispering something urgent. He sat back, jaw tight, fury radiating off him in waves. Evelyn picked up the second folder with deliberate care. "And now," she said, "we address the matter of Jennifer Eleanor Caldwell's estate." "Last will and testament of Jennifer Eleanor Caldwell," Evelyn read, her voice measured and clear. "Updated 18 months ago, witnessed by myself and a notary public of Hartford County. The testator was evaluated by Dr. Sarah Hammond, a board-certified psychiatrist, and declared fully competent to execute this document." She looked directly at Terrence, and I saw it coming before he even spoke. 18 months ago. His voice was tight. Mom was in the middle of chemo 18 months ago. Her judgment was compromised. Medications, stress. I anticipated that concern. Evelyn replied evenly. She produced a document and slid it across the table. "Which is why I have Dr. Hammond's written evaluation confirming your mother's full cognitive capacity at the time of signing." Then she placed a USB drive on the table. The small black rectangle seemed to draw all the air from the room. "I also have video documentation of the signing itself," Evelyn continued. "Your mother wanted no ambiguity. She recorded herself explaining every decision in this document. The video is 34 minutes long and available for review if anyone wishes to contest her competency." Patricia's phone had stopped moving. She stared at the USB drive like it might explode. "That's..." Terrence swallowed. "That's very thorough." "Your mother was a thorough woman, Mr. Caldwell." Evelyn's lips curved just slightly. "Now, Mrs. Caldwell left a letter that she specifically requested I read aloud to all present." She lifted a single page, cream-colored stationery, the expensive kind. I recognized it immediately. My mother's special paper, the kind she kept in her desk drawer for important correspondence. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate, written during chemo when her hands trembled. "To those I love," Evelyn read, and my throat tightened. "If you are hearing this letter, then I am gone, and the moment I dreaded has arrived." Terrence had gone very still. "I love you all. I want you to know that first. But love does not make me blind." Evelyn paused, looking up at us to make sure we were listening. We were. None of us could look away. "For 35 years, I watched Denzel favor Terrence in ways he didn't even recognize as favoritism. It was simply how he saw the world. Sons matter. Daughters serve. I couldn't change him. Believe me, I tried." My hands were shaking. Grandma's grip steadied them. "When Natalie was born," Denzel said, "maybe next time we'll have a boy." I held my daughter in my arms and promised her silently that she would never be next time to me. A sound escaped me, half laugh, half sob. I'd never known that. Never known that was what he'd said when I was born. Evelyn continued reading, her professional voice carrying my mother's words into the light. "I watched Natalie grow up working twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. I watched her pay her own way through nursing school while Terrence received every advantage. I watched her come home to care for me during the worst 2 years of my life, changing my sheets when I was too sick to move, holding my hand during chemotherapy, singing me the songs I sang to her as a baby." Tears were streaming down my face now. I didn't try to stop them. "Terrence visited 3 times. 3 times in 2 years. Patricia made a small, strangled sound. "I do not write this to condemn my brother-in-law," Evelyn read. "I write it to explain why I made the choices I did. The assets I leave to Natalie are not a reward. They are not favoritism. They are the balance I could not provide while I was alive. They are what she was always owed." Terrence's face had gone pale, but his jaw was set. If Terrence is hearing this and feels angry, I understand. But I ask him to consider, why does he feel entitled to everything? Who taught him that? And what did he do to earn it other than being born male? The silence in the room was absolute. Evelyn looked up from the letter. The letter concludes with, "Natalie, my darling girl, you are never a burden. You are my heart. Live well, be happy, And never let anyone tell you that you don't deserve every good thing. With all my love, forever, Mom. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Grandma pressed a tissue into my hand. Now, Evelyn said quietly, setting the letter down with reverence, let's discuss what your mother actually left you. First, Evelyn said, pulling a document from the folder. The house. Terrence straightened. The house is part of Dad's estate. It was always in his name. Actually, Evelyn slid the document across the table. It wasn't. I watched Terrence grab the paper, his eyes scanning frantically. 5 years ago, your parents executed a deed transfer. The property at 127 Maple Drive was transferred from joint ownership to Jennifer Caldwell's sole name. What? The word came out strangled. Why would Dad agree to that? For liability protection, Evelyn explained calmly. Your father was facing a potential lawsuit from a dissatisfied client at the time. Moving the house into your mother's name protected it from any legal judgments against his business. It's a common estate planning strategy. I never heard about any lawsuit. It was settled out of court, but the deed transfer remained. Evelyn produced another document, official looking with a county seal. This is the recorded deed from Hartford County Land Records, dated 5 years ago. The property, currently appraised at $680,000, belonged solely to your mother. Patricia's face had gone a strange color. But that means... She couldn't finish the sentence. It means, Evelyn said, looking at me, your mother had full authority to leave it to whomever she chose. And she chose you, Natalie. The house. My house. The house where I'd grown up, where I'd cared for Mom, where Terrence had thrown me out like garbage 2 days after the funeral. It had been mine all along. No. Terrence shook his head. No, this has to be a mistake. Dad said, he always said, your father believed what he wanted to believe, Grandma Dorothy said, her voice sharp as broken glass. Jennifer told him the deed transfer was temporary for the lawsuit. She never transferred it back, and he never checked. I stared at the deed, at my mother's signature at the bottom, neat and deliberate. She'd planned this. 5 years ago, she'd already been planning. Additionally, Evelyn continued, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of the room, there is the matter of the irrevocable trust. The what? Terrence looked like he'd been hit. 8 years ago, your mother established an irrevocable trust with Natalie as the sole beneficiary. An irrevocable trust, once established, cannot be modified or dissolved without the beneficiary's consent. It exists entirely outside the probate process. 8 years ago, Terrence turned to Grandma Dorothy, his face contorting. You gave her the money. You gave her... I gave my daughter money that was mine to give, Dorothy said, unflinching. What she did with it was her business. The trust was funded with a $450,000 gift from Mrs. Whitfield, Evelyn confirmed. Your mother invested it conservatively in index funds over the past 8 years. The current value, she consulted her notes, is approximately $1,340,000. Patricia made a sound like she'd been punched. $1.3 million. My mother, who wore a Timex watch and grew her own vegetables and never bought anything she didn't need, had quietly built me a fortune while I thought I was barely scraping by. This is fraud, Terrence sputtered. Dad didn't know about this. He would never have allowed... Your father's knowledge is irrelevant, Evelyn said, her tone still perfectly level. The trust was legally established with funds that were never his. He had no claim to it, and neither do you, Mr. Caldwell. The USB drive sat on the table, 34 minutes of my mother's voice explaining why she'd done what she'd done. 34 minutes I would watch later, alone, when I could handle hearing her speak again. There is one final asset, Evelyn said. Terrence looked like he might be sick. Patricia's grip on his arm had turned white-knuckled. Your mother held a life insurance policy with Northwestern Mutual valued at $550,000. The beneficiary was designated as... She paused. Natalie Lynn Caldwell, solely. But I'm her... Terrence's voice cracked. I'm her nephew. I'm family. She can't just leave me nothing. She didn't leave you nothing, Mr. Caldwell. Evelyn pulled out a final page. Your mother's will specifies that you are to receive her personal effects, photograph albums, her jewelry collection, and a letter she wrote specifically for you. A letter. Terrence's laugh was hollow, broken. She leaves Natalie millions, and I get a letter. The jewelry collection has some meaningful pieces, Evelyn offered. I don't want her jewelry. Terrence slammed his palm on the table. Patricia jumped. I want what I was promised. I want what I earned. I want what you earned. The words came out of me before I could stop them. Quiet, but they filled the room. Everyone looked at me. You visited Mom 3 times in 2 years, Terrence. 3 times. You told me I was nothing but a burden while I was holding her hand through chemotherapy. What exactly did you earn? He stared at me. I stared back. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away first. Let's discuss the total figures, Evelyn said, and I could hear the faintest satisfaction in her professional tone. Evelyn arranged her papers with deliberate care. Passing to Natalie Lynn Caldwell from her mother's estate, the property at 127 Maple Drive, valued at $680,000. The irrevocable trust, valued at $1,340,000. Life insurance proceeds, $550,000. Additionally, from her father's estate, 40% of liquid assets, approximately $38,000. She looked up. Total, approximately $2,608,000. The number hung in the air. $2.6 million. My mother, who'd never complained, who'd tended her garden and made Sunday dinners and quietly endured 35 years of being dismissed, had left me nearly $3 million. Terrence didn't faint. He did something worse. He broke. Do you know what I've lost? His voice rose, cracking. Do you have any idea? I invested everything into Caldwell Properties because Denzel told me it was mine. The legacy was mine. The name was mine. He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. You were supposed to get married and disappear. He turned on me, and there was something desperate and ugly in his face. That's what Denzel said. That's what he promised me. You were going to find some husband and take his name, and we'd give you a nice wedding, and that would be it. That was the plan. He promised you someone else's life? I asked quietly. I'm losing my house, my marriage, everything I built. His hands were shaking. I need this money, Natalie. Don't you understand? I need it. Mr. Caldwell, Evelyn said, your financial situation is not grounds to contest a valid will. I'm not just contesting, He sat down heavily, his head in his hands. I'm the son. I carry the Caldwell name. That has to mean something. And there it was, the thing he'd built his entire identity on. The name. Grandma Dorothy's voice cut through the room like ice. Terrence, do you know when I first met you? He looked up, confused by the change in topic. You met me when I was little. I met you when you were 3 years old, at Denzel and Jennifer's wedding. You were the ring bearer. Yes, so? I asked Denzel's mother, your mother, what hospital you were born at. She said Hartford General. Dorothy's eyes were hard. I asked to see baby pictures. She said they were lost in a move. Everyone was frozen, watching. For 49 years, Dorothy continued, I've wondered why a mother wouldn't have baby pictures of her youngest son. The air in the room changed. Grandma, I said softly. What are you saying? Dorothy turned to Evelyn. Could you please retrieve the documents I gave you last month, the ones from the private investigator? Evelyn pulled out a sealed envelope. Mrs. Whitfield hired a private investigator 6 months ago, she explained. After Jennifer's diagnosis, she wanted to understand the full family situation before finalizing the estate plans. You investigated me? Terrence stood again. You had no right. I had every right to protect my daughter's wishes, Dorothy said. And what I found, Evelyn, please read the summary. This was it. The thing my mother had hinted at in her letter. The hospital records. Evelyn opened the envelope and removed a single page. According to hospital records from Hartford General, she read, no Terrence Caldwell was born in 1973. However, a Terrence Morrison was born to Margaret Morrison on June 15, 1973. She produced a birth certificate. Margaret Morrison was Denzel's father's secretary. She gave the baby up for adoption. The adoptive parents, Robert and Eleanor Caldwell, Denzel's parents. The room went absolutely silent. Denzel's parents adopted you when Denzel was 6 years old, Evelyn continued. They raised you as Denzel's brother, but you are not blood related to the Caldwell family. The words seemed to echo. Not blood related, not a Caldwell. No. Terrence's voice was barely a whisper. No, that's not. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. Patricia stood up. You told me you were the Caldwell heir. You said the name, the legacy, everything was yours by blood. I thought. Terrence looked between all of us, desperate. My parents never told me. Denzel never knew. How could... Denzel didn't know, Dorothy confirmed. But Jennifer found out 3 years ago when she was helping clear out your mother's estate after she died. She found the adoption papers in a safety deposit box. Mom knew? I looked at Grandma. Why didn't she tell him? Because she knew it would destroy him, Dorothy said. She wasn't cruel, Natalie. She just wasn't going to let his false claim destroy you. Terrence sank back into his chair. All the fight had gone out of him. The Caldwell name, he said to no one in particular. Everything I built, everything I thought I was. It's all what you were given, Dorothy said, not unkindly. You were chosen, Terrence. Adopted into a family who wanted you. That should have been enough. Patricia grabbed her purse. I need to go. Patricia. Terrence reached for her. Don't. She stepped back. You told me we were investing in the family legacy. You told me the inheritance was guaranteed. I gave up my career because you said we'd be secure. Her voice broke. I married a lie. She walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed louder than a slam would have been. Terrence sat alone at the table, everything he'd built his life on crumbling around him. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a hollow kind of sadness for a man who'd been so desperate to matter that he'd made everyone else feel like they didn't. Natalie, his voice was hoarse. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but please. We're still family. Help me. Everyone looked at me. This was the moment, the choice. I thought about my mother's letter, about mercy and justice, about the difference between the two. I'm not going to let you be homeless, I said quietly. Hope flickered in his eyes. But I'm also not going to bail you out of bad decisions you made while treating me like I was worthless. The hope died. You can rent a room, I continued. You can start over the way I've had to start over every time this family decided I wasn't enough. But any relationship between us? I paused. That's going to take time. A lot of time. And honestly, I don't know if we'll ever get there. I stood up, picked up my bag. Mom left you a letter too, didn't she, Evelyn? Yes. Mr. Caldwell, would you like me to read it? Terrence nodded, couldn't speak. Evelyn opened another envelope. Dear Terrence, she read, I know you're angry, but I want you to understand. Denzel raised you to believe you deserved everything. I'm leaving Natalie what she deserves, not because I hate you, but because I love her. You were adopted into love, Terrence. You were chosen, but somewhere you forgot that being chosen was a gift, not an entitlement. I hope someday you remember. Jennifer. I walked toward the door. Grandma followed. Behind us, Terrence sat alone at the mahogany table, Patricia gone, his identity shattered, holding a letter from a woman who'd seen him more clearly than he'd ever seen himself. At the door, I turned back. Mom loved you, I said, but she loved me enough to protect me from you. That's the difference. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, too bright for the conversation we'd just had. Grandma linked her arm through mine. You were merciful, she said. I don't feel merciful. I feel empty. Empty is normal after a war, darling. You've been fighting for 28 years. Your body doesn't know what to do with peace yet. We walked to the car in silence. I was a millionaire. I owned a house. I had enough money to never worry again, and all I could think about was my mother, meeting with Evelyn every month for 8 years, building this future brick by brick, knowing she wouldn't be here to see it. "Grandma," I said as we reached the car, "did she know about the accident?" No one can know something like that. But she prepared like she knew. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother prepared because she loved you," she finally said. "She would have done this whether she lived another day or another 30 years. Because love isn't about being there. It's about making sure the people you love are safe even when you can't be." She pulled a velvet box from her purse. "She wanted you to have this, after the reading." Inside was the sapphire ring, the one Grandma had worn my entire life. "I can't." "It was mine," Dorothy said. "I gave it to Jennifer on her wedding day. She gave it back when she knew she was dying, so I could give it to you at the right moment." She slid it onto my finger. Perfect fit. "Now," Grandma said, "let's go home. You have a lot of decisions to make, but today you just breathe." I looked back at this brownstone, at Harrison and Cole, at the place where my life had changed in the space of an hour, and I thought, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me enough to do what you couldn't do for yourself." The sapphire caught the light, deep blue, like freedom, like sky, like possibility, like lavender in full bloom. The first thing I did with my inheritance was nothing. For 3 days after the will reading, I went to work. I put on my scrubs, I drove to Maplewood Senior Living, and I took care of my patients like the world hadn't just turned upside down. Mrs. Rosa needed her medications. Mr. Chin needed help with his physical therapy. The Harrises in room 304 needed someone to listen while they talked about their grandson's wedding. They needed me to be normal, so I was. "You're different," Mrs. Rosa said on the 3rd day. I was helping her into her wheelchair for lunch, and she was watching me with those sharp eyes that saw everything. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you put down something heavy you'd been carrying a long time." I adjusted her blanket, not meeting her eyes. "My parents passed away recently." "I know, Mija. I'm sorry." She touched my hand. "But that's not what I mean. You seem freer somehow." The word hit me harder than it should have. Free. Was that what this feeling was? This strange lightness that kept catching me off guard? "Your mama," Mrs. Rosa continued, "she used to visit sometimes. Did you know that?" I stopped. "What?" "Last year, during your lunch breaks. She'd sit in the courtyard, watch you through the window working with patients. One day I was out there and I asked her why she didn't just come say hello." My throat tightened. "What did she say?" Mrs. Rosa smiled. She said, "I don't want to interrupt. I just want to see her being brilliant." See, that's the exact word she used, brilliant. I excused myself and went to the stairwell. The same stairwell where I'd gotten the call about my parents' death. The same concrete steps where I'd sat and couldn't breathe. Now I sat there again and cried. But not from grief this time. From understanding. My mother had seen me. Really seen me. And she'd thought I was brilliant. 2 weeks after the will reading, I stood in front of 127 Maple Drive with Diane beside me. The house looked the same. Colonial style, 4 bedrooms, white with black shutters. The lawn needed mowing. Terrence had clearly stopped maintaining it before he left. Through the side yard, I could see my mother's lavender garden. Most of the plants were dead or dormant. But there, in the corner where the fence blocked the worst of the winter wind, new growth was pushing through. Purple-green shoots, stubborn and alive. "You don't have to go in if you're not ready," Diane said. "I know, but I need to see it. I need to understand what she left me." My key worked now. I'd had the locks changed back the day after the will reading, and there was something deeply satisfying about turning that key and hearing the click. Inside, the house was quiet. Empty in a way that had nothing to do with furniture and everything to do with absence. Terrence had taken his things and left. The house was clean, either out of some remnant of shame or because he'd been too rushed to trash it. My mother's belongings were still here. Her reading glasses on the nightstand, her robe hanging in the closet, the recipe cards in the kitchen drawer, each one stained and annotated in her handwriting. I walked through the rooms slowly, remembering. The living room where Dad would watch football and ignore me. The kitchen where Mom taught me to make her lasagna. My childhood bedroom, still painted the lavender she'd chosen when I was 6. "Your mom picked that color," she'd told me then. "It's for protection, for new beginnings, for my brave girl." I'd thought she just meant it was pretty. In her bedroom, I found a photo album on the nightstand, small, leather-bound. I didn't remember seeing it before. Inside, photographs of me. From infancy to adulthood, first steps, first day of school, high school graduation, nursing school graduation, every milestone she'd witnessed. On the first page, in her careful handwriting, "For my bravest girl, page by page my life in pictures," and under each photo, a caption. Natalie, age 3, first time helping in the garden. She picked lavender for a week straight. Age 8, lost her first tooth. Denzel forgot. I made it special. Age 16, chemistry test, 98%. She didn't tell her father. I framed it anyway. Age 22, nursing graduation. Denzel didn't come. Said he had a meeting. I took 200 photos because I knew someday she'd want to remember that someone was proud of her. I was so proud I thought my heart would burst. I sat on the edge of her bed and read every caption, every small moment she'd documented, every time she'd been proud of me, even when no one else was paying attention. Diane found me there 20 minutes later, the album in my lap, tears streaming down my face. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside me. "You okay?" "She saw me," I said. "My whole life, she saw me. And I didn't know. I thought I was alone in this family, but I wasn't. She was there. She was always there." Diane put her arm around me. "What are you going to do with this place?" I looked around the bedroom, at the lavender walls, at the window overlooking the garden. "I can't live here," I said. "Not yet. There are too many ghosts, too many memories of feeling small." "So you sell it?" "No, I can't sell it either. It's her love, Diane. It's her love turned into walls and windows and that damn lavender garden she tended every single day." "So what then?" I thought about it. About what my mother would have wanted. About what would honor what she'd built. "I rent it," I said slowly. "To someone who needs it. Someone who'll appreciate it. Someone who'll take care of the garden." "You sure?" "No, but I think it's right." We went downstairs together. In the kitchen, there was a note on the counter. Terrence's handwriting. "Natalie, I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. But I am. T." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Sorry wasn't enough, but it was a start. The call came on a Tuesday night, 6 weeks after the will reading. I was in my new apartment, a 2-bedroom I'd rented with Diane near the hospital. Small but bright, with a balcony where I'd started growing lavender in pots. The plants were tiny, barely more than seedlings, but they were growing. Terrence's name on my phone screen still made my stomach clench. "Hello? Natalie." His voice was different, smaller somehow. "I know you said you needed time, but I was hoping—" "Could we meet? Just coffee, just to talk." I almost said no, almost hung up. But I remembered my mother's final letter. "You were adopted into love, Terrence. You were chosen." "Where?" I asked. "Anywhere you want. Your choice." We met at a coffee shop in West Hartford. Neutral ground, public, easy to leave if I needed to. Terrence was already there when I arrived. He looked different. The Hugo Boss suit was gone, replaced by a plain button-down and khakis. No Rolex. His hair was grayer than I remembered, or maybe I'd just never looked closely enough before. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "I'm not here to give you money." "I know. I'm not here to ask." He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "I'm here to apologize. Not because I want something, because I need to say it." I waited. "I spent 52 years believing I was owed things because of a name that wasn't even mine," he said. "I treated you like you were nothing because Denzel treated me like I was everything, and I never questioned it. I never thought about what that meant for you." His voice cracked. "I lost my house, my marriage, my business, and you know what the worst part is? I deserved it. I earned every bit of this." "Yes," I said quietly. You did. He looked up, surprised by my honesty. You don't need comfort, Terrence. You need truth, and the truth is you were cruel to me. You made me feel worthless for 28 years. You kicked me out of my own home before my parents were cold in the ground. I took a breath. But I also think you didn't know who you were, and that's sad. I found her, he said abruptly. Who? My birth mother, Margaret Morrison. She's 75, lives in Boston. We had lunch last week. I hadn't expected that. How was it? She cried when she saw me. His smile was bitter. She said she gave me up because she thought the Caldwells would give me a better life. She thought they'd give me everything. And they did, just not what mattered. No, he agreed. Not what mattered. We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop hummed with conversation around us, normal people having normal days. What are you going to do now? I asked. I got a job, sales, at a real estate company in Bridgeport. Not my company, someone else's. I start at the bottom. He looked at me. I'm 52 years old and I'm starting over like I'm 25. That must be hard. It's humbling. He paused. Natalie, I know I don't deserve your help. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know, Jennifer was right. I was chosen. I forgot that was a gift. I thought about my mother, about 8 years of planning, about her final letter telling Terrence he'd been loved. I won't give you money, I said. But if you want to have coffee once a month just to talk, I'm willing to try. His eyes filled with tears. Why? Why would you do that? Because my mother taught me that love isn't about what people deserve. It's about who you choose to be. I don't know if I can be better. Then don't be better. Just be honest. That's all I'm asking. We finished our coffee, made plans to meet again in 4 weeks. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was mercy. And mercy, I was learning, was its own kind of strength. 3 months after the will reading, I met with a financial advisor named Rebecca Chin. Evelyn had recommended her, a woman with 20 years of experience and, more importantly, 0 interest in getting rich off my inexperience. Here's what I recommend, Rebecca said, sliding a document across her desk. We keep the trust invested. Draw only what you need for living expenses. The life insurance goes into a high-yield savings account for emergencies and opportunities. She looked up at me. We pay off your student loans immediately. That's $45,000. And you keep working. Keep working? I'd expected her to suggest I retire, travel, do something extravagant. You love your job, don't you? I do. Then money shouldn't change who you are, Natalie. It should give you options, not an escape from yourself. So that's what I did. I paid off my student loans. 6 years of debt, gone in a single transaction. The relief was physical. Like someone had lifted a weight off my chest I'd gotten so used to carrying, I'd forgotten it was there. I kept my position at Maplewood. Switched to day shift because I didn't need the night differential anymore. Took a week off to just breathe, to process, to understand that my life had fundamentally changed. And then I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program. It was something I'd wanted for years, the chance to diagnose, to treat, to help patients in a deeper way. But the program was expensive, and between my old student loans and barely there savings, it had always seemed impossible. Now, it wasn't. I used money from the trust, following Rebecca's careful plan. Enough for tuition and books, with the rest still growing quietly in the background. You're sure about this? Diane asked when I told her. You could literally do anything, travel the world, buy a house, never work again. I could, I agreed. But that's not freedom, Diane. That's just emptiness with money. I want to build something. I want to use what Mom gave me to become more of who I already am. She hugged me. She'd be proud. I hope so. 6 months after the will reading, I got a call from Evelyn Cole. Natalie, do you have time to stop by the office? There's something we need to discuss. I'd been expecting this. The final letter. The one my mother had marked for later. Evelyn's office looked the same. Afternoon light through tall windows, law books lining the walls, the faint smell of old paper and furniture polish. She handed me an envelope, cream-colored stationery, my mother's handwriting. She specified that I should give you this after 6 months, Evelyn said. She wanted you to have time to process everything else first. I opened it with shaking hands. My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, 6 months have passed. You've had time to grieve, to understand, to adjust. I want to tell you something I couldn't say while alive. I was wrong to stay with your father for as long as I did. Wrong to let him dismiss you. Wrong to wait so long to protect you. But I was right about one thing. You didn't need me to make you strong. You were always strong. I just needed to give you the tools to see it. Here's what I hope for you. I hope you forgive me for not leaving sooner. I hope you forgive Terrence for not knowing better. I hope you forgive yourself for ever believing you weren't enough. And most of all, I hope you use your freedom not to punish anyone, but to build the life I couldn't. Love isn't about money, darling, but money can buy you time, safety, and choice. Use it wisely. The lavender in our garden? I planted it the day you were born. Lavender for protection, for peace, for new beginnings. Now go plant your own garden. I love you more than all the lavender in all the gardens in all the world. Forever. Mom, P.S. There's one more thing. A safety deposit box at Hartford Trust Bank. The key is with Evelyn. Inside is something I want you to decide about. I looked up at Evelyn. She was already holding out a small key. The safety deposit box at Hartford Trust Bank was small, nondescript. The bank officer led us to the vault, left us alone. Inside the box, $50,000 in cash, neatly banded, and a note. For Terrence, if you decide he's earned it, or for someone else who needs a second chance. Your choice, Natalie. You decide who deserves grace. I stared at the money. $50,000. Enough to save Terrence from his worst debts. Enough to give him a real fresh start. But my mother hadn't left it to him. She'd left it to me. To decide. What are you thinking? Evelyn asked. I'm thinking my mother was testing me. One last time. Testing you how? To see if I learned the difference between justice and revenge, between mercy and enabling. I touched the note. She knew I'd be angry. She knew I'd have every right to let Terrence drown in the consequences of his choices. And she wanted me to choose anyway. I thought about Terrence at the coffee shop, starting over at 52, about Margaret Morrison giving up her baby hoping for a better life, about the Caldwell name that had poisoned a man who'd never known it wasn't really his. I'm not giving him the cash, I said. Evelyn nodded, unsurprised. But I'm going to invest it in a trust for him. He can't touch the principal, but he can use the monthly income. Maybe $2,000 a month. Enough to help him rebuild, but not enough to fall back into old patterns. That's generous. It's strategic, I corrected. If I give him cash, he'll spend it trying to be who he was. If I give him steady income, he has to build something new. And if he doesn't? Then the money comes back to me and goes towards something useful. I closed the safety deposit box. Either way, I tried. That's all Mom wanted, for me to try. Back in Evelyn's office, I signed the papers establishing the trust for Terrence. Then I made one more decision. The house, I said. I've decided what to do with it. Oh? I want to sell it, but not on the open market. I'd been thinking about this for weeks. I want to sell it to a specific buyer, a single mother, a nurse at a different hospital. She has 2 daughters, ages 6 and 9. She's been trying to get out of a bad rental situation for years. You want to sell to her at market rate? No, I want to sell to her at exactly what she can afford, whatever that number is. Evelyn smiled. Your mother would approve. I know, and there's one more thing. I took a breath. I want to start a foundation, the Jennifer Caldwell Foundation for Daughters Without Advocates, legal aid for women in estate disputes, nursing scholarships for women in patriarchal families. Everything my mother had to fight for alone, I want other women to have help with. That's ambitious. I have the money, I have the reason, and I have time. I met her eyes. Will you help me? I'd be honored. 1 year after the will reading, I stood in the backyard of 127 Maple Drive and watched 2 little girls tend my mother's lavender garden. The house had a new family now, Maria Gonzalez and her daughters, Emma and Sophia. They'd moved in 3 months ago, and the house already felt different, lived in, loved, full of the kind of chaos that comes with children and hope. The lavender garden was enormous now. What had been dying stalks were now full, purple blooms. The girls had taken to it with enthusiasm, learning the names of each variety, understanding which ones needed more water, which ones preferred shade. "Miss Natalie!" Emma, the younger one, ran over. "Look, the hidcote is blooming!" I knelt down to her level. "It's beautiful. You're taking such good care of it." "Mama says your mom planted this garden when you were born." "She did." "Why lavender?" I touched one of the purple blooms, released its scent into the air. "She told me once that lavender means new beginnings. She wanted me to know that even when things are hard, there's always something beautiful growing underneath." Sophia, the older sister, joined us. "Do you miss her?" "Every day. But I also feel her everywhere, in this garden, in the choices I make, in the kindness I try to show." "Were you mad at her? For dying?" Kids asked the questions adults wouldn't. I appreciated that. "For a while," I admitted. "But then I realized she didn't leave me. She prepared me." Maria called from the house. "Girls, dinner! Natalie, you're staying, right?" "I'd love to." As we walked toward the house, I saw a car pulling up. Terrence's car, a Honda Civic now, not the BMW. He got out, holding an envelope. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said awkwardly. "Monthly check?" I asked, nodding at the envelope. "Yeah, $500, for the trust." He'd insisted on paying something back, even though the trust terms didn't require it. I wanted to drop it off in person. "How's the job?" "Good. Slow, but good. I'm learning humility." He smiled, and it looked genuine. "It's surprisingly educational." Another car arrived. Diane's Honda Odyssey. She'd brought dessert as promised. And then a Lincoln Town car. Grandma Dorothy being helped out by her new friend from Maplewood, where she now lived in assisted living. Family. Not the one I was born into. The one I built. We ate dinner together. Maria's incredible arroz con pollo, Diane's chocolate cake, Grandma's stories about my mother as a young woman. The girls asked questions. Terrence was quiet but present, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, entirely whole. The Jennifer Caldwell Foundation opened its doors on what would have been my mother's 58th birthday. The office was small, a renovated brownstone in Hartford not far from Evelyn's firm, but it was ours. In 2 years, we'd helped 127 women navigate estate disputes. We'd provided legal aid, financial planning, and emotional support. We'd funded 19 nursing scholarships. We'd connected daughters with resources their mothers never had. I'd graduated from my nurse practitioner program. I worked 3 days a week at Maplewood, 2 days at the foundation. The balance felt right. Diane had moved in permanently. We'd bought a house together. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom with a yard big enough for a proper lavender garden. Terrence and I had coffee once a month, like clockwork. He'd met his birth mother's family. He was rebuilding, slowly. We weren't close, but we were honest. It was enough. Grandma Dorothy was 83 now, sharp as ever, living at Maplewood and terrorizing the other residents with her wit. She'd written a memoir called Raising a Warrior, How Jennifer Caldwell Saved Her Daughter. It was in the editing phase. Patricia had moved to California. I heard she'd started a blog about recovering from financial manipulation. Good for her. And me? I was standing in the foundation's main office looking at the wall of photos, women we'd helped. Stories of daughters who'd been dismissed, overlooked, told they didn't matter. Until someone showed them they did. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma, the younger girl from 127 Maple Drive. "Miss Natalie, the garden is amazing this year. Can you come see it tomorrow?" I texted back, "I'll be there." The door opened behind me. A woman in her mid-30s, nervous, clutching a folder. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sarah. I called about... My father just died, and my brother is saying I'm not entitled to anything because I'm adopted, and I don't know what to do, and someone told me you might be able to help?" I gestured to a chair. "Sit down. Tell me everything." She did. It took an hour. When she finished, I could see myself in her story. The dismissal, the fear, the belief that maybe she really didn't deserve anything. "Sarah," I said gently, "you're going to be okay. We're going to help you. And I want you to know something. Your worth isn't determined by a will or a name or who someone else decided was more important. You're already enough." Her eyes filled with tears. "How do you know?" "Because someone told me the same thing once, and I'm going to keep passing it forward until every daughter knows she's worth protecting." That evening, I drove to Hartford Memorial Gardens. It was spring, 2 years and 1 month since my parents died. The oak tree over their graves was budding, new leaves unfurling in the warm air. I brought lavender from my garden, the stalks I'd grown from cuttings of Mom's original plants, purple and fragrant and alive. I placed them on her grave, then sat in the grass. "Hey, Mom, I know I talk to you every week, but today felt important." A bird sang somewhere in the cemetery. "The foundation is thriving. We're helping people, real people with real stories like mine, like ours." I traced her name on the headstone. They'd finally installed the permanent marker. Jennifer Eleanor Caldwell, 1969 to 2025. She planted gardens and daughters. Grandma had chosen the inscription. It was perfect. "I forgave Terrence, not because he earned it, but because you taught me that mercy isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to be better than the hurt you received." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of lavender. "I forgave you too, for staying as long as you did, for not leaving when you wanted to. I understand now. You were doing what you thought was best, and you were preparing, always preparing." I closed my eyes. But most importantly, Mom, I forgave myself for believing I wasn't enough, for thinking I needed to earn love. For all those years, I thought I was the problem. When I opened my eyes, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I'm building my own garden now, and it's beautiful. It's everything you wanted for me. Freedom, choice, a life where I don't have to prove my worth because I already know it. I stood up, brushed grass off my jeans. People ask me if I'm angry about the 28 years I spent being told I wasn't good enough. I'm not angry anymore, because those years taught me something you knew all along. Worth isn't given. It's not inherited. It's not determined by gender or blood or birth order. I touched the lavender on her grave. Worth is what you build when no one's watching. It's the 2 a.m. bedside vigils, the double shifts, the moments you show up when everyone else walks away. It's the quiet preparation, the secret planning, the love that works in shadows so someone else can stand in the light. The cemetery was empty now, just me and the graves and the memory of a woman who'd loved me more than lavender and all good things. "You didn't give me money, Mom. You gave me permission to believe I was always enough." I walked back to my car. In the rearview mirror, I could see the cemetery fading into dusk, but the lavender on her grave still caught the last light, purple and bright and impossible to miss. The Jennifer Caldwell Foundation has helped 127 daughters escape patriarchal inheritance systems in its first 2 years. Every daughter deserves an advocate. Every woman deserves to know her worth. Every family should recognize that love isn't measured in gender. This story is dedicated to every daughter who was told she wasn't enough. You are. You always were. For resources on estate planning and protecting yourself legally, visit the Foundation website. In memory of all the mothers who prepared gardens their daughters would inherit.